Not making
Did he send out a fundraising email? Yes or no?
Hold on a second. We just played
for.
Yeah,
you were.
He sent out a fundraising email at 6 o'clock.
Hold on a second. We just played for people at home exactly what the video says.
Yeah, I've watched it.
You cannot sit here and lie about that same video. That doesn't work.
So
the video did not say that they should defy the orders of the president. It said that you cannot follow illegal orders. That's in the military code of justice.
In today's video, Abby Phillip takes on Ben Ferguson during News Night with Abby Phillip as a heated CNN panel discussion quickly erupts into chaos, with Paul Rhetoric and Tim Parrish stepping into the exchange while Abby Phillip sharply confronts Ben Ferguson over reckless political messaging, military responsibility, and the real-world fallout of escalating rhetoric. And as Ferguson falters while trying to defend his position, the discussion lays bare just how volatile and dangerous this moment has truly become. So let's dive straight in and watch Abby Phillip decisively shut down Ben Ferguson on News Night with Abby Phillip.
It's pretty crystal clear, Paul Rieckhoff. She's saying they're advocating for members of the military to refuse legal orders, and the video clearly states otherwise. Why do you think that this really kind of got underneath the skin of the president and the White House?
I don't know, but it's unacceptable. And I think it's a time for everybody, no matter what your political background is, to call it what it is. I mean, the President of the United States is calling for the execution of members of Congress. It is dangerous. It is unprecedented. It is bad for our national security. It is divisive. And it's amplifying what is already a very dangerous environment across this country. We've all talked around this table and other places about the need to bring down the temperature because of the threat level to everybody in this country. He just turned it up to 100. And these folks are now in immediate danger. So is everyone else around them. So is everyone in Congress. And I think it's a day that has our enemies celebrating. Our children are watching. And I think this is of the utmost seriousness. And it's a time for people to put their political differences aside and call it for what it is.
Tim?
I actually think, and Paul, I agree with you, we've got to bring down the temperature. But I do think it's interesting. The president did not call for anyone to be hanged or be executed. You're talking about a person, and I find the irony in this, who had an assassination attempt against his life, who we saw conservatives get assassinated with Charlie Kirk. And so the president would never call for this to actually happen. This is political theater is what it is. And you talk about our enemies around the world and what they see. What they've actually seen is members of Congress tell members of the military to defy the orders of the commander-in-chief.
That's
what our enemies actually
People
saw.
can see it
and
for
so the
themselves.
president didn't call for that. You can't show one of these tweets where the president called for that.
Actually, Tim, hold on.
That's a misrepresentation.
That part I'm going to stop you on because we did just, in fact, show the tweets where he did do that. He not only called it, seditious conspiracy, but
that's what he called it.
Amplified a tweet that said that they should be punished by hanging. He did that.
The president of the United States did not call for members of Congress.
Okay, but he called them traitors. Let's say that he agreed he called them
I
traitors.
guess in your world,
he called them traitors.
But why? But hold on, Tim. Why would he amplify a message saying that those members should be punished with hanging? Why?
What the president's tweet said, he simply called it a seditious act.
But you're not answering. You're not answering my.
Members of Congress.
Tim, you're not answering my question. Why would he amplify that message? Why would the president of the United States?
Why would members of Congress
do that?
Where they have an all-time low rating on the American people having confidence
I'm going to
in
ask
members
you
of
again.
Congress.
Why would the president of the United States amplify a message that says explicitly that they should be punished by hanging?
The president, and I'm going to say again, Abby, the president of the United States did not call for any members of Congress to be hanged.
He absolutely did. That's like calling for it in today's world.
Without getting lost in the sauce here, he is amplifying threats to members of Congress. However you cut it, if you're explaining, you're losing. And I think everybody who's objective here can see what this was. It's not good for our country.
Isn't this the very same thing?
What truly stands out in this debate is how Paul Rhetoric and Abby Phillip anchor their concerns in real-world facts rather than dramatic performance, because there is a long-established rule in U.S. military law that service members are obligated to refuse unlawful orders, which is not partisan spin but a core principle written into the Uniform Code of Military Justice and reinforced through decades of training shaped by past abuses like My Lai and Abu Ghraib, with multiple Pentagon manuals clearly stating that claiming I was just following orders is not a valid legal defense, making it unreasonable to frame reminders of this duty as encouraging mutiny, since that argument falls apart under even minimal scrutiny, and where Tim Parrish's position truly collapses is in downplaying the effect of presidential rhetoric, As research from agencies like the Secret Service and DHS consistently shows that violent language from powerful leaders raises real-world threats, especially against public officials, at a time when members of Congress already face record levels of death threats and Capitol Police investigations have risen several times over the last decade, meaning when a president echoes language tied to execution or treason, even indirectly, it does not exist in isolation but lands in a nation already on edge. And from a national security perspective, this kind of escalation is harmful rather than helpful, which is why former defense officials from both Republican and Democratic administrations have warned that politicizing the military weakens civilian control not by reminding troops of the law but by pushing the idea that loyalty should come before legality, a concept central to authoritarian systems, and that is exactly why U.S. doctrine has always stressed constitutional duty over allegiance to any single leader. Because Rioff and Phillip are not debating tone for its own sake but highlighting how words from the top shape behavior, threats, and public trust, and once that boundary is crossed the consequences stop being theoretical.
That a few months ago, Republicans were saying Democrats were doing, except that now the president's doing it and it's okay?
I go back to the video. Like, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now if it wasn't for a ridiculous video that was put out by Democrats telling people in uniform to defy the President of the United States of America.
But that's not what they said.
That's a fact.
What they said.
I was real quiet for a long time. That was like a long time for me. So let me,
So
let me say point two here.
We just laid out that the video says you should not follow illegal orders. Do you think that members of the military should follow illegal orders?
I think it's pretty clear that this was an obvious video that was put out without any issue around it, saying if you don't like what the president's doing,
that's literally
you don't
not what
have
it
to.
said.
It literally. I go back to what Mark said. I go back to what Mark said on this channel. By the way, after he sent out a fundraising email, which is the reason why this is a total ball of crap to start with. This was a fight they wanted with the president. He's sending out fundraising emails tonight while claiming, "Oh my gosh, I'm afraid of my life. Please send me money for re-election." If this is such a terrible moment in political history, you don't send out fundraising emails saying, "Please send me money," after I said to people in military uniform, defy the orders of the President of the United States of America. That's what he said in his email.
No, it is not.
Did you look at the email tonight?
Yes, I did. You're not telling the truth about the video.
He said, "Give me money tonight," while saying, "I'm afraid for my life."
Because the president attacked him, and also Donald Trump.
No, he attacked the President of the United States of America by telling people in the military to not obey the President of the United States of America.
I know you want to make 1 + 1 = 7. He did not do that.
Can I say something about the video?
The more you say it, it does not make it.
Did he send out a fundraising email? Yes or no?
Hold on a second. We just played
for. You were.
He sent out a fundraising email at 6 o'clock.
Hold on a second. We just played for people at home exactly what the video says.
Yeah, I've watched it.
You cannot sit here and lie about that same video. That doesn't work.
So
the video did not say that they should defy the orders of the president. It said that you cannot follow illegal orders. That's in the military code of justice.
An example of one of the illegal orders we're talking about?
The U.S. military's chief lawyer is actually making the case that bombing the Venezuelans could be illegal. There's actual things happening right now.
Can I address the video?
Can I address the video,
some
E3 that is sitting on a post is not going to defy. The service members are not dumb. Every time they take their oath, they know that they are supposed to obey the orders of those appointed over them. They don't need members of Congress to go on TV in a political discussion.
The video itself.
You don't have to obey these illegal orders.
Just 1 second.
The video itself, in my view, was unnecessary.
Right.
Okay, you could even argue it was imprecise. Hold on, let me finish. It was sloppy. I don't think you need to tell members of the military that they have an obligation to resist an illegal order. They already know that.
Right.
But by putting out that video does not warrant a response from the president, calling you a traitor and calling for your execution.
Okay.
What Abby Phillip and Paul Rioff are pushing back against here is not partisan outrage but the real-world consequences of power, language, and precedent, because the claim that reminding service members to refuse illegal orders somehow encourages rebellion ignores decades of established military doctrine, as since the Nuremberg trials U.S. forces have been clearly trained that unlawful orders must be disobeyed, a standard reinforced through the UCMJ, the Law of Armed Conflict Manuals, and regular ethics briefings, making this idea neither controversial nor political inside the military but absolutely foundational, and where Ben Ferguson's argument truly falls apart is in treating presidential amplification as harmless, since research from the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Capitol Police shows that threats against lawmakers spike after inflammatory political rhetoric, especially when opponents are framed as traitors, with Capitol Police investigations into threats rising sharply over recent years, while experts repeatedly warn that normalizing violent language fuels copycat behavior even when leaders insist they are speaking rhetorically, and the fundraising argument also misses the larger reality because members of Congress routinely raise money during crises, including after assassination attempts, threats, or security incidents, since campaigns do not pause when danger appears, which does not reduce the seriousness of the threat environment, but what truly escalates risk is a president publicly labeling lawmakers as enemies or boosting language linked to execution, whether directly written or not, and from a national security perspective, former Pentagon leaders from both parties have warned that politicizing obedience weakens civilian control of the military, because civilian control rests on legality rather than loyalty to any one individual. Which is the line Abby Phillip and Paul Riehoff are highlighting as dangerously blurred. And history shows that once this boundary is crossed, the consequences stop being theoretical and become deeply destabilizing.
This video
that is the difference here.
Hold on, that is the
this
difference
video
here.
would not have been necessary
If you weren't trying
the
to make money
president
off of it.
hadn't
Just a second.
completely replaced senior military leadership and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the people that we could look up for. It wouldn't be necessary if he hadn't gone in at the beginning of his service and fired so many JAG attorneys that tell you if something is illegal or an illegal, a legal or illegal
every
order.
president does
It
that.
wouldn't
Every
be
president
necessary
doesn't
if the president hadn't
Hold on a
fired
second.
inspectors general, who are the police of the military, or if he hadn't called every single high military commander in to tell them that their biggest enemy was going to be domestic and at home, and that if they didn't like it, they could quit. The reason they did this video was to remind younger soldiers who might not have someone in command
Or raise money.
that they are not responsible to follow illegal orders. The U.S. law actually
know that.
requires
They don't need to do that.
military
For the
members
military.
to
They already know
disobey
that.
unlawful no.
So, Lee,
no,
with
they
that-
do not necessarily know that. And the
Whoa,
thing
yes,
is,
they do. Whoa, Lee, you can't insult.
military.
I
You
am
cannot
not
insult
yet
members of the
insulting
military.
you.
literally in between all of
The
us.
reaction-
Hold on, guys. We're all
the
talking.
reaction-
Absolutely.
the
Hold on, guys.
reaction-
Hold on, hold on, guys. We are all
This
talking at the same time.
response-
Let's all
this
stop talking.
response-
Abby's in charge.
Let's all
Pause.
just stop
Abby's
talking
in charge.
for 1 second, okay?
This
let's stop talking for 1
response-
second, including you, Lee. Just a second, okay? We take your point. Tim, you're saying it does not need to be said.
Well, what I'm saying is I can't
However-
let my colleagues sit here and say members of the military are too stupid to understand
I
that
did
they
not
don't
say
need
that,
to
sir. That's
obey
ridiculous.
the orders of the members of the military know this. It's in their oath every time they get promoted.
If
Give me
I
an
am
example
18-year-old,
of one.
if
Give
I'm an
me an example.
18-year-old soldier and my president, who I have had in my life since I was 9 years old, tells me to shoot a protester, which this president did do in his first term, and Mark Esper said, no, we cannot do that, sir. If I'm an 18-year-old soldier and my president tells me to do that, they are saying, as former military, as people who have also made an oath to the Constitution, an oath to this country, who are now sitting members of Congress, we are reminding you that you do not have to obey, and it's on the screen, this big, bigger than their head, an illegal order.
That's a very dangerous precedent to set.
Can I just-
You
We're
can't
going
give me one
to hit
example
pause on
of
this
that, of where
conversation
that's
and continue
happened.
it when we come back at the end of the next break.
What Lee McGowan is pushing back against, and where Tim Parrish's argument truly unravels, is the idea that military knowledge exists in isolation, untouched by politics or pressure from leadership at the top, because in reality the U.S. military depends on guardrails like inspectors general, JAG officers, and senior command to clarify what is lawful during moments of chaos. And when those safeguards are weakened or stripped away, the resulting confusion is not hypothetical but well documented. With history clearly supporting this point, as after Vietnam the U.S. restructured its training specifically because young, lower-ranking soldiers had followed unlawful orders under intense pressure, which is why modern doctrine stresses refusing illegal commands rather than blind obedience, and while experienced officers may grasp this instinctively, junior enlisted troops, especially 18 and 19-year-olds on their first deployment, often defer to authority without the confidence or legal clarity to push back. And there is also real precedent for concern when political leaders frame domestic dissent as an enemy, since former Defense Secretary Mark Esper confirmed that using active duty troops against protesters was seriously discussed during Trump's first term, which explains why reminders matter not because troops are uninformed but because pressure alters behavior. With military psychology research showing that compliance increases when directives come from the highest authority, making it misleading to dismiss such reminders as political theater, because this was not a campaign stunt but a response to an environment where institutional safeguards were weakened and rhetoric escalated, and that is the central point Lee McGowan is effectively defending, that reinforcing constitutional duty is stabilizing rather than subversive. While what truly destabilizes a system is treating constitutional reminders as disloyalty, especially when history shows the greatest military failures occur not when orders are questioned but when they are blindly followed.